See you tomorrow.
Woo! Let's go.
Dubs in the chat, baby. Come on.
Fever now! NC's career high. Period.
Caitlin Clark, masterclass. A beauty, perfection. A 45-point double.
Picture this. A player who has spent the last few weeks under a microscope, coming off a back injury, missing shot after shot from deep, and suddenly the entire basketball world is asking the same question. Is she finally cracking under the weight of it all? Then one Friday night in Indianapolis, she answers that question in the loudest way imaginable, and by the time the final buzzer sounds, nobody is talking about a slump anymore. This is the story of the night Caitlin Clark rewrote the WNBA record book in a single game, and honestly, once you hear the full picture, you'll understand why people are still buzzing about it. Before we dive in, if stories like this get you fired up, stick around, because there's a lot more to unpack than just a highlight reel. Let's set the scene properly, because context is everything here. Clark had not been having an easy stretch. She'd only knocked down 3 of her last 19 attempts from three-point range, and her shooting percentage from deep had dipped to somewhere around 32% on the season. For most players, that's a rough patch you quietly work through. For Clark, every single miss turns into a debate. Is she hurt? Is she pressing too hard? Have defenses finally figured her out? That's the reality of being one of the most watched athletes in the sport right now. Every possession gets dissected like it's a courtroom trial. So when Indiana took the floor against Seattle, there was this underlying tension in the building, like everyone was waiting to see which version of Clark would show up. Would it be the hesitant, searching player from the last few weeks, or the one who reshaped how people think about shooting range the moment she stepped into the league? Turns out, nobody needed to wait very long for an answer. Right from the jump, Indiana played with an urgency you could feel through the screen. Clark wasn't just looking for her own offense, she was manipulating the entire Seattle defense with her gravity alone. Defenders had this impossible choice to make every time she touched the ball near half court. Step up too tight, and she blows past you. Sag off even a couple feet, and she's rising from a distance most players wouldn't even consider a real shot. Send extra bodies her way, and suddenly there's an open teammate standing in space that shouldn't exist. That's the thing about Clark's range, it doesn't just add points to a scoreboard, it fundamentally warps how a defense has to operate for 40 minutes straight. And on this particular night, that distortion turned into a full-blown collapse for Seattle. By the time it was over, Clark had gone 11 for 18 from the field and 6 for 10 from beyond the arc, numbers that on their own would make for a great outing. But she didn't stop there. She also drew 19 free throw attempts and calmly knocked down 17 of them, which tells you this wasn't a player standing around waiting for catch-and-shoot looks. She was attacking downhill, drawing contact, and forcing Seattle's defense into foul trouble the entire evening. Somewhere in the second quarter, almost as a footnote to everything else happening around her, Clark buried a three-pointer that made WNBA history all on its own. That shot pushed her career total to 200 made threes, and she got there in just 74 games, shattering the previous record of 81 games set by longtime league sharpshooter Katie Smith. Now, take a second to actually appreciate what that means. Katie Smith wasn't some forgotten name. She's one of the most respected shooters the WNBA has ever produced. Beating her mark isn't a small footnote, it's a statement. And here's the part that makes it even more impressive. Clark isn't sneaking up on anybody. Every single team in this league scouts her relentlessly. They know her tendencies, they know her range, they build entire defensive game plans specifically to take away her threes. She's not exploiting surprise, she's breaking records while opponents are actively trying to stop her from doing exactly that. That's the difference between a good stat and a genuinely meaningful one. But if you thought the three-point record was going to be the headline of the night, you clearly underestimated what Clark had in store. Because the record wasn't even the biggest moment of the game. Not close. Seattle had other plans. Despite Indiana building a comfortable cushion earlier, the Storm clawed their way back with a brutal third quarter, and suddenly the Fever found themselves staring at an 8-point deficit midway through the fourth. All that record-breaking energy from earlier in the night could have evaporated into a frustrating road team collapse. Instead, Clark decided the fourth quarter belonged to her. She poured in 16 points over that final stretch, but it wasn't just about scoring. With the game tied and under a minute left, Seattle had a fast break chance that looked like an easy bucket. Clark sprinted the length of the floor, recovered in time, and swatted the attempt clean out of bounds. That's not a play people usually associate with a player known primarily for her shooting touch and vision. Moments later, she calmly stepped into a three from the left wing that gave Indiana the lead for good. Then, to close it out, she went a perfect 4 for 4 from the free throw line in the final 17 seconds to seal a 110-107 win. Think about that sequence for a second. A game-saving block. A go-ahead three under pressure. Ice-cold free throws to finish it off. That's not just a scorer having a big night. That's someone controlling the outcome of a basketball game with pure will. When the box score finally settled, it read 45 points, 10 assists, 4 steals, 2 blocks, and 6 triples. Her 45 points set a new Indiana franchise record. And here's the piece of trivia that really puts an exclamation point on the whole night. It was the very first time in WNBA history that a player recorded at least 40 points and 10 assists in the same game. Not Diana Taurasi. Not Sue Bird. Not any of the legends who built this league. Caitlin Clark, on a Friday night against a rebuilding Seattle team, just 2 seasons into her career. It's worth pausing here to talk about what her range actually does to opposing defenses, because it's easy to just see the highlight and move on without understanding the ripple effect. Long before she ever set foot on a WNBA court, her ability to shoot from well beyond the standard arc had already become her signature. It wasn't just that she made those shots, it's that she made defenders rethink where safe even meant on the floor. A defender who thought she was giving enough cushion could suddenly realize Clark was already well within her comfortable shooting pocket. And once a defense has to respect that kind of range, everything else opens up. Driving lanes get wider. Passing windows get cleaner. Her teammates suddenly have room to operate that simply wouldn't exist against a normal shooter. That's why her scoring and her playmaking are so tightly connected. The fear of her pulling up from 30 feet creates chaos that shows up in ways the box score can't fully capture. Now let's talk about where this fits into her broader story, because context matters more than a single highlight ever could. Every young player entering a league goes through an adjustment phase where opponents study them relentlessly, looking for weaknesses to exploit. For Clark, that process has been turned up to an extreme volume from day one. Physical defense, traps, constant double teams, non-stop media attention, it's all been part of the deal since she arrived. And her response hasn't been flawless, because no young player's response ever is. There have been rough shooting nights. There have been turnovers. There have been stretches where it genuinely looked like the league was catching up to her. But that's not a flaw in the story, that's actually the whole point of it. Growth doesn't happen in spite of struggle, it happens because of it. And what made this particular performance so compelling wasn't just the highlight reel plays, it was watching her blend the spectacular with the fundamentally sound. The deep threes were there. The playmaking vision was there. But so was the defensive hustle, the free throw discipline, and the composure to close out a tight game late. Her head coach Stephanie White called the stat line almost surreal afterward, and honestly that word fits. Clark herself talked about believing in the performance before it even happened, about visualizing that kind of night in advance. That idea of confidence deserves a moment of its own, because it gets misunderstood a lot. Confidence isn't believing every single shot is going in. It's believing the next one is still worth taking even after the last 3 missed. Coming into this game, Clark had every reason to get cautious after that rough shooting stretch. Instead, she trusted the reps she'd put in, and that trust turned into 6 made threes, including the one that decided the game. That's the cycle every real shooter has to live through. You shoot, you miss, the noise starts, you go back to the gym, and you shoot again anyway. Most people only ever see the highlight or the box score, they don't see the process that happens in between. And that's really the deeper story here, more than the individual record itself. When a player keeps making history over and over, it starts to feel almost routine to the outside world, which creates this strange, nearly impossible standard. A 20-point, 8-assist game starts to feel like an off night by comparison. That's the price that comes with an extraordinary start to a career, but it's also proof of just how far the bar has already been pushed. Before Clark, 200 career threes in 81 games was the fastest anyone had ever done it. Now that number belongs to her, set at 74 games, and every future sharpshooter who enters this league will know exactly what number they need to chase down. That's how one player can shape the future of a sport without ever sharing the floor with the players who'll eventually come for her records. Young guards watching this game are seeing the boundaries of acceptable shooting range get pushed even further outward. Coaches everywhere are going to start encouraging skills that used to be considered too risky to build an offense around. This isn't about crowning her the greatest of all time, and it's not meant to erase what the players before her accomplished either. Katie Smith's record mattered. That's exactly why breaking it means something. The players who built this league set the standards that current stars are now chasing down, and every generation is supposed to push past the one before it. That's not disrespect. That's just how sports are supposed to work. A great player sets a mark, another spends years chasing it, and eventually someone shows up who redefines what people even thought was possible. So where does this leave things? Records only tell you what's already happened. They can't guarantee what comes next. Injuries happen. Team chemistry shifts. Playoff pressure is a completely different beast than the regular season grind. The WNBA is stacked with elite talent capable of taking over a game on any given night, and nobody is entitled to keep breaking records just because they've done it before. But what happened on this particular Friday night is impossible to argue with. 200 career three-pointers in just 74 games, a new league record. 45 points and 10 assists, the first performance of its kind in WNBA history. A franchise scoring record for Indiana. A defensive block that saved the game. A go-ahead three when her team needed it most. And 4 ice-cold free throws to lock it up when the pressure was at its highest. That's not hype, that's not projection, that's simply what the record book now says happened. And maybe that's the real takeaway here. The best answer to doubt was never going to be an argument or a comment section rant, it was always going to be performance. On this night, Clark let the scoreboard do all the talking for her. So here's the real question worth sitting with. Is this just one incredible night from a talented young player, or is this the moment we look back on as the start of something genuinely historic? That part of the story hasn't been written yet, but based on the pace she's setting, the next chapter probably isn't too far away.